Hello everyone. Welcome to the Anime Verse Hub's channel. Today we're diving deep into episode 163, and let me tell you, this episode is absolutely packed with incredible emotional moments and devastating revelations that will leave you completely speechless. Remember, this is based on the novel, so it won't be 100% similar to the Donghua version. Today, we will dive into what to expect in the upcoming episode, and without further ado, let's go into the story. After Han Li's absolutely devastating battle in the previous episode, our protagonist made the cold, calculated decision to eliminate every trace of his enemies. With his gaze darkened by years of bitter experience and filled with the kind of ruthless pragmatism that only centuries of cultivation can forge, Han Li cast a spell that burned the unconscious, black-robed old man to nothing but ashes scattered in the wind. A demonstration of power that would make even peak immortal kings tremble with fear. But what Han Li discovered through the soul-searching technique was far more troubling than he initially realized. The memories he extracted revealed a truth that sent chills down his spine. This disciple belonged to the Ghost Spirit Sect, serving directly under Donghua, the same female cultivator who had formed her core and spent countless years orchestrating an incredible manhunt across the entire Nine Nations Alliance, dispatching thousands of disciples to scour every corner of the cultivation world in search of Han Li's whereabouts. The revelation left our protagonist startled and deeply troubled, though he reminded himself with growing confidence that many years had passed since those dark days. Now that he possessed the overwhelming power of a nascent soul stage cultivator, equivalent to the combined devastating attacks of millions of Foundation establishment cultivators, perhaps there was no longer any need to dwell on such matters from his past. However, what Han Li didn't realize was that Wu Hong's death was far from the end of this deadly confrontation. Meanwhile, back in the treacherous halls of the Ghost Spirit Sect, a cultivator in plain robes sensed with growing alarm that Wu Hong's soul-bound command talisman had been utterly destroyed, a clear sign that his subordinate had met a violent and permanent end. The message was quickly reported to Wang, Han Li's sworn enemy, whose burning hatred had only intensified over the decades of fruitless searching. Although Wang did not yet know it was Han Li who had acted with such devastating efficiency, he was absolutely determined to find the killer of his sect's men. With the kind of ruthless authority that commanded respect and fear in equal measure, he immediately summoned 3 core formation cultivators whose combined power could level entire mountain ranges, ordering them to investigate with the full backing of the sect's resources. The trio dispersed like hunting hawks, beginning their search with the methodical precision of experienced trackers. Eventually following clues that sparkled in the dim light of their investigation like fallen stars leading them forward, they tracked the disturbances to Han Li's former cave residence on Mount Tianqiu. But when they arrived with expectations of finding their quarry, they discovered nothing but ruins. Han Li had long since departed, leaving behind only the memory of his presence like morning mist. Meanwhile, in the treacherous mountains of Qingniu, where danger lurked behind every shadow, a band of black-clad brigands, their numbers exceeding 300, launched a devastating ambush against the escort convoy of the renowned Tianqiu escort agency. Though there were barely over 30 guards in blue robes defending the precious cargo, they fought with the kind of incredible bravery and determination that legends are built upon, facing impossible odds that would have crushed the spirits of lesser men. Within the convoy traveled 2 extraordinary individuals whose destinies were about to intersect with forces far beyond their mortal understanding. The middle-aged scholar known as Younger Brother Han, a direct descendant of the Han clan whose bloodline carried ancient secrets, and Elder Brother Lei, a descendant of the Lei clan's martial lineage whose strength was equivalent to 10 peak martial artists combined. When the 3 bandit leaders appeared, each possessing the ability to single-handedly destroy entire villages, Elder Brother Lei made the decisive choice to reveal his true capabilities. With movements that demonstrated incredible speed and devastating precision, he struck with the force of a lightning bolt, swiftly defeating all 3 leaders and scattering the black-clad gang like leaves before a hurricane. Thanks to his extraordinary intervention that saved countless lives, the convoy survived and continued its ancestral journey. Elsewhere, suspended high above the clouds like an immortal deity surveying the mortal realm, Han Li rode the winds back to a land he had not seen for more than a century. The emotions filling his powerful nascent soul were a complex mixture of nostalgia, anticipation, and the deep melancholy that comes with the passage of countless years. Before him lay Qingniu Town, once a poor, humble village where he had spent his earliest years. Now transformed into a prosperous town whose streets buzz with activity and whose buildings reach toward the sky with ambitions their founders could never have imagined. Concealing his overwhelming presence that could terrify every mortal within a 100-kilometer radius, Han Li quietly wandered through the familiar yet changed streets, his heart heavy with memories that felt both like yesterday and like lifetimes ago. He recalled with painful clarity the time he once lived with his plump third uncle at the Fragrant Spring Tavern, a place where laughter echoed through the night and simple pleasures brought joy to simple lives. The tavern remained, standing like a monument to the passage of time, but those familiar faces that had once brought warmth to his young heart had long since vanished into the endless cycle of mortal existence. Standing before the now dilapidated tavern, whose weathered walls held the ghosts of 1,000 memories, Han Li froze completely. His eyes, which had witnessed the fall of immortal kings and the birth of new worlds, now brimming with the kind of sorrow and nostalgia that even centuries of cultivation could not entirely suppress. By chance, that seemed orchestrated by the very heavens themselves. Han Li overheard two young scholars engaged in animated conversation about the Han clan. Their words revealed a truth that made his immortal heart tremble. The Han clan had risen to become a prominent family in Jingzhou, now holding power and influence equivalent to the legendary Fu and Li clans, whose names commanded respect across entire kingdoms. They mentioned with the casual enthusiasm of youth that the Han clan was hosting a grand ancestral ceremony, summoning all clansmen from the farthest reaches of the realm to participate in honoring their shared heritage. When Han Li heard the name Wuli Hamlet, the tiny, insignificant village of his ancestors that had seemed so small and forgotten, his heart trembled with emotions that threatened to overwhelm even his incredible mental fortitude. Filled with desperate urgency and burning curiosity that consumed his thoughts like wildfire, he hurriedly approached the scholars for more details, then departed at once with the kind of speed that could cross continents in mere hours. Suspended high above Qingshan Mountain like a deity contemplating the works of mortals, Han Li gazed down with eyes that had seen the rise and fall of entire cultivation dynasties. The transformation below was both miraculous and heartbreaking. Where once stood humble huts that could barely shelter their occupants from winter storms, now rose grand estates whose architecture rivaled imperial palaces. Dirt paths that had once turned to mud with every rainfall were now replaced with stone roads that would last for millennia, and the innocent laughter of children that had once filled the air like music had faded into the past like echoes in an empty hall. Only one modest structure remained as a bridge between past and present: the Ancestral Hall, whose simple plaque read Han Clan Ancestral Hall, in characters that seemed to glow with the weight of history itself. Inside this sacred space, Han Li discovered hundreds of ancestral tablets, arranged with the kind of meticulous care that spoke of genuine reverence and unbroken tradition. His eyes, which had gazed upon the secrets of heaven and earth, fell upon familiar names that struck his heart like physical blows. Han Zhu, Han Tie, Han Tiansheng, each tablet representing a life lived, a story completed, a connection to his own humble origins that no amount of cultivation could ever truly sever. As Han Li lingered in this sanctuary of memory, lost in emotions that made him feel both incredibly powerful and utterly vulnerable, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the sacred silence like thunder in a clear sky. A middle-aged scholar and a bearded warrior entered with the confident stride of men accustomed to command and respect. Seeing Han Li standing motionless before the ancestral tablets like a statue contemplating eternity, their emotions flared with the kind of righteous fury that burns in the hearts of those who believe they are protecting something sacred. The bearded warrior's voice boomed with outrage. "Thief, how dare you profane the Han clan's ancestral hall with your presence? Today, you shall not leave this place alive." Without hesitation, Elder Brother Lei lunged forward with a storm-like strike that could shatter mountains and split rivers, a devastating attack that represented the pinnacle of mortal martial arts and carried enough force to level entire city blocks. Yet Han Li stood completely motionless. his hands clasped behind his back, with the serene confidence of one who had faced true immortals in battle, as immovable as a mountain that has weathered 10,000 storms. The collision produced a thunderous boom that shook the ancestral hall to its very foundations, causing dust to cascade from the rafters like snow. Elder Brother Lei's mighty fist, trained through decades of relentless practice and capable of crushing steel, landed with the full force of his incredible strength. But in the next instant, his expression changed drastically as he realized the absolute futility of his attack. A flash of azure light burst forth from Han Li's seemingly defenseless form, releasing power equivalent to the combined attacks of 1,000 peak martial artists. The devastating energy sent Elder Brother Lei's burly frame flying through the air like a straw doll before a hurricane, his body tracing a perfect arc that would have been beautiful if not for the terrifying implications of what had just occurred. At that crucial moment, the scholar stepped forward with the kind of courage that can only come from nobility of spirit and unshakable conviction. He was Han Tianqiu, the current head of the Han clan, whose bloodline carried the responsibility of leading thousands of descendants. Facing Han Li with remarkable composure despite witnessing a display of power that defied mortal understanding, he clasped his hands in respectful greeting. "I do not know why this esteemed cultivator has come to the Han clan's ancestral hall, but your presence here suggests purposes beyond our comprehension." Han Li slowly turned, his movement as graceful as flowing water and as inevitable as the changing seasons. With just one glance from eyes that held the depth of centuries and the weight of countless battles, both men gasped in utter disbelief. The face before them, though bearing the unmistakable signs of power that transcended mortal limitations, was identical to portraits they had studied since childhood. "This can't be possible," they whispered, with voices trembling between hope and fear. "That face, could it truly be our fourth great uncle, the legendary ancestor who disappeared into the cultivation world more than a century ago?" Han Li's response carried the kind of enigmatic wisdom that comes only with true power. "An imposter? I am who I am. Why would I need to impersonate another? But tell me, descendants of my blood, how do you know this face that has not walked among mortals for over 100 years? As their conversation continued, old names resurfaced like treasures buried in the depths of memory. The Seven Mysteries Sect, Li Fei Yu, the Lei clan's legendary forefather, whose martial prowess had become the stuff of legends. Secrets that had been thought buried in the depths of history were spoken by Han Li with the casual ease of one who had lived through those momentous events, each revelation carrying the weight of absolute truth. Han Tianqiu's entire body shivered with a mixture of awe and desperate hope as his gaze shifted to the ancestral altar, where the clan's most precious genealogical record lay, protected by generations of reverent care. With a casual wave of Han Li's hand, a gesture that demonstrated power equivalent to moving mountains, the golden register floated through the air as if carried by invisible servants, defying every law of nature that mortals understood. The descendants' eyes widened until they seemed ready to burst from their sockets, their hearts pounding with the kind of rhythm that threatened to shatter their rib cages as Han Li flipped through the weathered pages with fingers that had once inscribed immortal techniques and wielded artifacts that could reshape reality itself. Still filled with the need for absolute certainty that would remove every shadow of doubt, Han Tianqiu made the decision to bring forth the clan's most sacred ancestral relics. Items so precious that they were normally displayed only during the most important ceremonies. Han Li touched each artifact with hands that trembled, not from age or infirmity, but from the overwhelming weight of memories that threatened to consume even his immortal consciousness. His voice, when he spoke, carried the solemn weight of truth that could move heaven and earth. "This bow belonged to my second brother, Han Zhu, who could strike a sparrow's eye from 300 paces and whose laughter could fill an entire valley with joy. This wooden hairpin was my mother's, carved by my father's own hands during the winter, when food was scarce but love was abundant. And this little pouch was once filled with the simple treasures that meant more to a young boy than all the immortal artifacts in existence." Each word pierced like a divine blade straight into their hearts, cutting through decades of uncertainty and generations of wondering. No doubt remained. Not even the smallest shadow of skepticism could survive in the face of such overwhelming proof. Together, as if moved by a single will that transcended individual choice, both Han Tianqiu and elder brother Lei fell to their knees in the kind of kowtow that represents the absolute pinnacle of respect and reverence. Their voices, trembling with emotions too powerful for mere words to contain, spoke in unison. Unfilial descendants, Han Tianqiu and Lei pay our deepest respects to our fourth great uncle. Our earlier misunderstandings and shameful failure to recognize your honored presence, please find it in your immortal heart to forgive us. In that moment, the Han clan's ancestral hall, a simple structure that had witnessed the prayers and hopes of countless generations, brimmed with an atmosphere so thick with reverence, shame, and overwhelming emotion that even the air itself seemed to pulse with the weight of this integrated reunion. The youth who had once left this humble village as nothing more than a mortal boy with dreams too large for his circumstances had returned as a nascent soul cultivator whose power could reshape the very foundations of the world. And now, at last, he was recognized by his very own descendants in a moment that bridged the gap between mortal legacy and immortal achievement. What incredible developments await Han Li as he reconnects with his ancestral roots? Will Wang and his core formation cultivators track down our protagonist's location? And how will this emotional reunion affect Han Li's future cultivation path? That's all from me for this episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Your support helps me bring you more amazing content and means the world to me. Until next time, stay tuned for more incredible adventures in the cultivation world.